Sometimes the most powerful man in a city becomes dangerous for only one reason: someone he cares about is hurting. The rain was cold, but the silence inside that restaurant was colder. My name is Claire Bennett, and the night my life changed forever began with a storm that seemed determined to wash the entire city away. Water ran down the sidewalks in silver streams. Thunder rolled above the skyscrapers. Every sensible person had already gone home. I should have done the same. Instead, I found myself standing outside the most exclusive restaurant in the city, staring through walls of glass at people whose lives looked nothing like mine. My uniform was soaked. My hands would not stop shaking. My heart felt as if it were trying to escape my chest. For several seconds, I stood beneath the glowing sign above the entrance and wondered whether I should turn around. Then another gust of wind pushed rain against my face, and I knew I had nowhere else to go. I reached for the door. The moment it opened, warmth rushed toward me. So did silence. Conversations stopped. Forks paused in midair. Even the piano player seemed to miss a note. Dozens of strangers turned to look at me at exactly the same moment. I understood why. My clothes were stained from the terrible night I had just endured. My hair clung to my face. Rainwater dripped onto the polished marble floor beneath my feet. I must have looked like someone who had walked through a nightmare. Embarrassment burned through me immediately. I lowered my eyes and took a hesitant step forward. That was when I noticed him. Adrian Romano sat at a long table near the center of the room. Men in expensive suits surrounded him. Crystal glasses reflected the golden light hanging above them. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They were all watching him. And he was watching me. I had seen his face before on television, in newspapers, and in whispered conversations between people who lowered their voices whenever his name appeared. Yet nothing prepared me for seeing him in person. He looked calm. Completely calm. The kind of calm that made everyone else nervous. For several seconds, our eyes met across the restaurant. Something changed in his expression. It happened so quickly that I almost missed it. Surprise. Recognition. Then something deeper. Something I could not understand. A man beside him leaned forward and quietly said something. Adrian ignored him. Another man reached for his phone. Adrian ignored him too. His attention never left me. Suddenly he stood. Every person at the table rose with him. The room became even quieter. If that was possible. My pulse raced. I had no idea why the most powerful man in the city was looking at me as though I mattered. I had never met him. I was just a waitress trying to survive a terrible evening. Yet Adrian Romano crossed the room without hesitation. His footsteps echoed softly against the marble floor. When he finally stopped in front of me, the entire restaurant seemed to stop breathing. He studied me for one long moment before removing his coat and placing it gently around my shoulders. Then he looked toward the room behind him and spoke 6 words that nobody there would ever forget. Nobody leaves until I know everything. The sound of those 6 words seemed to settle over the restaurant like a second storm. Nobody argued. Nobody questioned him. Several people exchanged nervous glances, but no one moved toward the exit. I stood frozen beneath the weight of Adrian Romano's coat, trying to understand what was happening. The fabric was warm. Expensive. It carried a faint scent of cedar and something else I could not identify. For some reason, that simple detail made everything feel more real. Adrian turned slightly toward one of the men at his table. "Get the doctor." The instruction was calm, almost gentle. The man nodded immediately and disappeared without another word. I swallowed hard. "You do not have to do this," I said quietly. Adrian looked at me as though the statement made no sense. "Yes, I do." The answer caught me off guard. Before I could ask what he meant, another woman approached carrying a towel and a glass of water. Her kindness seemed genuine, but I noticed she kept glancing toward Adrian for reassurance. Everyone did. It was as if the entire room adjusted itself according to his presence. I accepted the water with trembling hands. Across the restaurant, conversations remained suspended. Nobody returned to their meals. Nobody laughed. The piano had stopped completely. Adrian guided me toward a private seating area near the back of the room. Large windows overlooked the rain-soaked city beyond. Traffic lights reflected across the streets like scattered jewels. Everything outside continued moving as though nothing unusual had happened. Inside, however, time felt different. Slower. More careful. "Tell me your name," Adrian said. "Claire Bennett." He nodded once. The reaction was small, but something flickered across his face. Recognition again. The same strange recognition I had seen earlier. "Claire," he repeated quietly, as though testing the name against an old memory. My pulse quickened. "Have we met before?" For the first time, Adrian looked away. Not long. Just long enough to make me notice. "No," he said. Yet something about the answer felt incomplete. Minutes later, a physician arrived and spoke with me privately. The examination was brief, respectful, professional. When it ended, I learned what I already suspected. I was exhausted, dehydrated, overwhelmed. Nothing more serious than that. Relief washed through me. When the doctor left, Adrian remained seated across from me. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass behind him. "You should rest," he said. I almost laughed. "I do not think I can." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. It disappeared quickly, but I saw it. "That makes two of us." Silence settled between us again. Strangely, it no longer felt uncomfortable. Then one of Adrian's associates approached and leaned close enough to whisper something into his ear. The temperature in the room seemed to change. Adrian's expression became unreadable, controlled, focused. The man stepped back and waited. "What is it?" I asked before I could stop myself. Adrian studied me for several seconds. Then he stood. "Someone finally told me where you came from tonight." A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with the rain outside. The room grew quiet once more. Adrian buttoned his jacket and looked toward the windows overlooking the city. When he spoke again, his voice was calm. But every person in the restaurant immediately stopped breathing. "Now," he said softly, "we can start finding answers. Answers are dangerous things. Sometimes they heal you. Sometimes they change everything you thought you knew." I remained in the private lounge long after Adrian left to speak with his associates. The restaurant was still operating, but it no longer felt like a restaurant. It felt like the center of something much larger. Through the glass walls, I watched rain slide down the windows while city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. Every few minutes, someone in a dark suit crossed the room carrying documents or speaking quietly into a phone. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody appeared rushed. Yet the entire building seemed to be moving with purpose. An hour earlier, I had been standing alone in a storm. Now I was sitting beneath a crystal chandelier wrapped in the coat of the most powerful man in the city. Nothing about my life made sense anymore. A woman named Sophia arrived with tea and a fresh set of clothes. Her kindness felt genuine. "Mr. Romano wants you to be comfortable," she said softly. The statement unsettled me for reasons I could not explain. Why would Adrian Romano care whether I was comfortable? After changing into the dry clothes, I felt human again for the first time all night. When I returned to the lounge, the rain had finally begun to slow. The city beyond the windows looked calmer. My thoughts did not. Nearly 30 minutes later, Adrian returned. The room changed the moment he entered. People straightened slightly. Conversations stopped. Even Sophia quietly stepped aside. Yet his attention focused entirely on me. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," I admitted. Confused, but better. To my surprise, that earned the faintest smile. "That is understandable." He sat across from me. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he placed a small object on the table between us. A folded white handkerchief. Time seemed to stop. My breath caught immediately. I knew that handkerchief. Not because it belonged to me. Because I had seen it before. Years ago. The fabric was worn at the edges. Delicate initials were stitched into one corner. AR. My eyes lifted slowly toward him. "Where did you get this?" Adrian watched me carefully. "You recognize it?" It was not a question. I swallowed hard. Memories surfaced through the fog of exhaustion. Rain. A frightened young woman sitting alone near a bus station. A cold night. A borrowed handkerchief offered to comfort someone crying. A small act I had forgotten almost entirely. I gave this to someone years ago, I whispered. Adrian nodded once. My sister. The words landed with unexpected weight. Silence filled the room. Suddenly, every strange moment from the past few hours felt connected by an invisible thread. The recognition in his eyes. The urgency. The protectiveness. None of it had been random. Adrian leaned back slightly, his expression calmer than ever. She never forgot your kindness, he said. Neither did I. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The city lights reflected across the wet streets below. And sitting across from Adrian Romano, holding a forgotten handkerchief from another life, I realized this story had started long before I walked through those restaurant doors. Memory is a strange thing. Sometimes it hides the moments that matter most until someone places them directly in front of you. I sat there staring at the handkerchief while fragments of that night returned one by one. I remembered the bus station. I remembered the rain. I remembered a young woman sitting alone on a bench with tears in her eyes. She had looked frightened and lost, and I had done the only thing that felt natural. I sat beside her. I listened. I gave her my umbrella until her ride arrived. Before leaving, I handed her the cloth handkerchief because she had been crying and could not stop apologizing for it. At the time, it felt insignificant. A small kindness on an ordinary evening. Yet somehow that moment had traveled through years and circumstances until it led me here. Adrian watched quietly as understanding settled across my face. I never even learned her name, I admitted. Elena, he said softly. She still keeps that umbrella. I blinked in surprise. After all these years? A faint warmth appeared in his expression. She said it reminded her that good people still existed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The city stretched beyond the windows like a sea of lights. Somewhere below, traffic moved through wet streets while thousands of strangers continued living their lives, completely unaware that mine had just changed. You have been looking for me? I finally asked. Adrian did not answer immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the handkerchief resting between us. Not constantly, he said. But I never stopped paying attention. The honesty of the statement caught me off guard. Most powerful men would have turned the story into something dramatic. Adrian presented it like a simple fact. Why? I asked. Because gratitude matters. His answer arrived without hesitation. Most people remember what was taken from them. Very few remember what was given. The room fell silent again. I looked down at my hands. For the first time that night, exhaustion began giving way to something else. Relief. The fear that had followed me through the storm was slowly disappearing. In its place came a feeling I had not expected. Safety. A knock sounded at the door. One of Adrian's associates stepped inside carrying a folder. The man approached carefully and placed it on the table. Everything has been verified, he said. Adrian nodded. The associate left without another word. I noticed the folder immediately. So did Adrian. For a moment, neither of us touched it. Then he opened it and scanned several pages. His expression remained calm, but I could sense a shift in the atmosphere. Focus replaced reflection. Purpose replaced nostalgia. Whatever information the folder contained clearly mattered. After a minute, he closed it and looked directly at me. Claire, there are some things you need to know. My stomach tightened. About what happened tonight? He nodded once. And about why you ended up at my restaurant. The answer sent a chill through me. Not because I was afraid of Adrian. For the first time all evening, I was not afraid of him at all. I was afraid that the night I thought had been random was about to reveal itself as something very different. And judging by the look in Adrian Romano's eyes, the truth was far bigger than I had imagined. The truth rarely arrives all at once. More often, it opens one door and reveals 10 more waiting behind it. I watched Adrian close the folder and place both hands on the table. For the first time since entering the restaurant, I saw genuine concern in his eyes. Not fear. Not uncertainty. Concern. Somehow that unsettled me more than anything else. Claire, he said quietly, the events of tonight were not completely random. I felt my stomach tighten. What does that mean? Adrian leaned back slightly. The city lights reflected across the glass behind him. For the past several months, someone has been asking questions about you. I stared at him. About me. He nodded. Your work. Your apartment. Your routine. The people you spend time with. The words sounded absurd. I was nobody important. A waitress trying to pay bills and keep moving forward. Why would anyone care? Adrian's expression remained unreadable. That is exactly what I intend to find out. The room fell silent. I glanced toward the folder again. Pages filled with notes and photographs were visible for only a moment before Adrian closed it completely. Whatever information it contained, he clearly believed I should not see all of it yet. Strangely, I trusted his judgment. How long have you known? I asked. A few days. And you did not tell me? A shadow crossed his face. I did not have proof. The answer felt frustratingly reasonable. Before I could respond, the door opened again. This time a young woman stepped inside. She paused the moment she saw me. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. It is really you. I stood slowly. Something about her seemed familiar, though I could not place it. Adrian rose as well. Claire, this is Elena. Understanding hit me instantly. The bus station. The umbrella. The handkerchief. 5 years disappeared in a single second. Elena crossed the room and embraced me before I could react. I have wanted to thank you for so long, she said. Her voice trembled slightly with emotion. You changed my life that night. I laughed softly from surprise. I gave you an umbrella. Elena shook her head. You gave me hope. The sincerity in her voice left me speechless. Adrian watched the exchange quietly. For the first time, I noticed something different about him when he looked at his sister. The hard edges disappeared. The powerful businessman everyone feared became simply a brother. A grateful brother. After a while, Elena sat beside me and began sharing stories. She told me how she had spent years searching for the woman who helped her during one of the hardest moments of her life. She told me how Adrian had quietly kept looking even after everyone else gave up. Every detail made my chest tighten. Not from fear. From disbelief. All this time, people had remembered something I barely remembered myself. Eventually, Elena left the room to take a phone call. The silence that followed felt different than before. Warmer. Easier. Adrian studied me for several moments. Now you understand why I could not ignore what happened tonight. I looked down at the old handkerchief resting in my hands. Then I looked back at him. I think I am beginning to. Outside, dawn was still hours away. Yet somehow it felt as though an entirely new chapter of my life had already begun. Some people enter your life like a storm. Others arrive so quietly that you only realize their importance after everything has changed. When dawn finally began coloring the edges of the city skyline, I found myself standing beside one of the tall windows overlooking the empty streets below. The storm was gone. Rainwater still shimmered on the pavement, but the clouds had moved on. For the first time in hours, the city looked peaceful. I wished I felt the same. Behind me, Adrian was speaking quietly with several associates. Elena had already left. The restaurant was nearly empty now. Yet despite the calm surroundings, I could feel tension building beneath the surface. Something was happening. Something Adrian had not fully explained. I watched the sunrise for several moments before hearing footsteps approach. You should get some sleep. His voice was calm as always. I turned toward him and managed a small smile. That seems to be everyone's advice tonight. A faint smile appeared in return. It is good advice. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then I took a breath. There is still something you are not telling me. Adrian's expression changed slightly. Not enough for most people to notice. Enough for me. You are observant. I am serious. He looked toward the city below before answering. The people asking questions about you stopped 2 days ago. My stomach tightened immediately. Why? Because they found what they were looking for. The answer sent a chill through me. And what was that? Silence followed. Long enough to make me uncomfortable. Finally, Adrian met my eyes. You. The single word hung between us. I searched his face for some explanation that would make everything simpler. None came. I do not understand. I know. His honesty somehow made the situation worse. He walked toward the window and stood beside me. The rising sun painted the glass with gold and amber light. Claire, there are people in this city who pay attention whenever someone unusual appears. I frowned. I am not unusual. That actually earned a genuine smile. That is where you are wrong. I folded my arms. I am a waitress. You are also someone who changes lives without realizing it. I looked away. Compliments had always made me uncomfortable, especially when they came from someone who rarely wasted words. Adrian continued speaking. You helped Elena. You volunteered in shelters. You worked double shifts to support programs for children. You spent years doing good things without asking for recognition. His gaze returned to the city. People noticed that. Something in his tone made me pause. Not everyone notices for good reasons. The realization settled heavily in my chest. Suddenly the questions, the investigations, and the strange attention surrounding me made more sense. Not completely, but enough. Adrian turned toward me again. Which is why you are not going home alone. I blinked. Adrian, no. His voice remained calm. You have spent your entire life protecting other people. Allow someone else to protect you for once. The statement caught me completely off guard. For several seconds, I could not think of a response. Outside, sunlight spread across the city. Inside, the distance between us felt smaller than it had all night. And standing there beside the man I had once feared, I realized something surprising. For the first time since the storm began, I no longer felt alone. The city began moving long before I understood why. 3 days after leaving the restaurant, I tried returning to normal life. I went back to work. I smiled at customers. I carried trays and memorized orders. From the outside, everything looked familiar. Inside, nothing felt the same. Adrian's words stayed with me. You have spent your entire life protecting other people. Allow someone else to protect you for once. I told myself not to think about him. That plan lasted less than a day. Everywhere I looked, I saw evidence of his influence. Not the kind people whispered about. A different kind. A new youth center announced expanded programs. A scholarship fund appeared for students from struggling families. Several local businesses joined a campaign supporting neighborhood education projects. The changes seemed unrelated at first. Then I started noticing a pattern. The same lawyers. The same community leaders. The same organizations. Different projects. One invisible architect. Adrian Romano. One afternoon, I met Elena for coffee. The cafe overlooked a small park filled with children enjoying the first warm weekend of spring. She stirred her drink and smiled at me over the rim of her cup. You are thinking about him again. I nearly choked on my coffee. Is it that obvious? Elena laughed. Only to everyone. I looked out the window. I still do not understand him. Neither does most of the city. Her smile softened. That is why they keep getting him wrong. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Elena reached into her purse and placed a folded newspaper clipping on the table. The article was nearly 8 years old. The photograph showed Adrian standing outside a community center during a fundraiser. Much younger. More serious. I read the headline twice. Millions donated to neighborhood development program. He never talks about this, I said quietly. Elena nodded. He never talks about any of it. Something about that answer stayed with me. Later that evening, I found myself walking through downtown after my shift ended. The city glowed beneath a sky painted with orange and purple light. People filled the sidewalks. Restaurants buzzed with conversation. Music drifted from open doors. Everything felt alive. As I crossed a busy intersection, a large digital billboard suddenly changed images. A new campaign appeared across the screen. Helping tomorrow start today. Beneath the slogan were photographs of schools, libraries, and youth programs. No company logo. No personal recognition. Just the projects themselves. I smiled without meaning to. Somehow, it felt exactly like Adrian. The next morning, local news stations began reporting on a wave of community investments spreading across the city. Reporters speculated endlessly about who was responsible. Politicians praised the effort. Business leaders rushed to support it. Ordinary people simply appreciated the results. For the first time, I saw something remarkable happen. Instead of talking about fear, people talked about hope. Instead of discussing power, they discussed opportunity. And standing outside my apartment that evening as the city lights flickered on one by one, I realized something important. Adrian had not changed the city through force. He had changed it by giving people a reason to believe things could be better. And somehow, in the middle of all those changes, he was changing me too. The truth arrived on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Not with sirens or headlines or dramatic revelations. Just a small box left outside my apartment door. At first, I thought it had been delivered by mistake. There was no sender listed. No note attached. Only my name written across the top in careful handwriting. I carried it inside and placed it on the kitchen table. For several moments, I simply stared at it. Something told me this was important. When I finally opened it, I found a collection of old photographs. My breath caught immediately. The first picture showed a bus station on a rainy evening nearly 5 years earlier. The second showed the same location from another angle. The third showed Elena sitting beneath the shelter holding the umbrella I had given her. Confusion washed through me. Then I noticed the final photograph. It was not focused on Elena. It was focused on me. Standing beside her. Talking. Listening. Offering help. Attached to the photograph was a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. The message was written in Adrian's unmistakable handwriting. You once asked why I remembered you. This is why. Beneath the note was another photograph. Older than the rest. A younger Adrian standing beside Elena. Both smiling. On the back was a date from years ago. It took me several seconds to understand. Then everything connected. Elena had not simply told her brother about the stranger who helped her. She had shown him the photograph. Somehow, through chance and persistence, my face had remained in their lives long after I had forgotten the moment existed. That evening, I called Elena. She laughed softly the moment I mentioned the box. So he finally sent it. You knew. Of course. Her voice carried warmth. He kept those photographs for years. I sat down slowly. Years. Claire, after that night, Adrian tried to find you. Not because he expected anything. Because he believed people like you should never disappear. For a long moment, I could not speak. Outside my window, the city glowed beneath the fading light of sunset. Cars moved through busy streets. People hurried home from work. Ordinary life continued. Yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a new message. A single address appeared on the screen, along with 4 simple words. Meet me at sunset. The next evening, I arrived at a quiet rooftop garden overlooking the river. Adrian was already there. The wind moved gently through the flowers surrounding the terrace. Golden light reflected across the water below. Neither of us spoke immediately. We simply stood beside the railing watching the city. Finally, I looked at him. You kept those photographs all this time. Adrian nodded. Some moments are worth remembering. I smiled despite myself. Most people would have forgotten. His gaze shifted toward me. Calm. Steady. Honest. Claire, you changed my sister's life on the worst day she had ever experienced. I never forgot that. The sunset painted the skyline with gold and amber light. And standing beside him above the city, I finally understood the truth hidden beneath every mystery, every act of protection, and every unanswered question. Adrian Romano had not been searching for someone to save. He had been searching for the person who reminded his family that kindness still existed. People think powerful moments announce themselves. In my experience, the most important ones arrive quietly. 6 months passed after that evening on the rooftop. Summer settled over the city. Trees filled the parks with color. Families gathered along the riverwalk. Children raced through playgrounds that had once stood empty. Everywhere I looked, life seemed brighter than before. My own life had changed too. The restaurant where I worked partnered with several community programs, and I spent more time helping organize events for local families than I ever imagined. Elena became one of my closest friends. The city no longer felt so large. It felt connected, purposeful, home. Through it all, Adrian remained exactly who he had always been. Calm, observant, quietly determined. The newspapers still wrote stories about him. People still speculated about his influence. Yet the version of Adrian I knew was different from the one strangers discussed. He remembered birthdays. He checked on scholarship students. He visited community projects without cameras. He noticed details everyone else missed. One evening, I was helping prepare a literacy fundraiser at a renovated community center when I noticed something unusual. Hundreds of people had gathered outside. Families, teachers, business owners, volunteers. As the sun began to set, the mayor stepped onto a small stage and announced a citywide initiative supporting education and youth programs. Applause filled the air. Then the mayor invited Adrian forward. I expected him to decline. He almost always did. To my surprise, he accepted. The crowd grew silent. Adrian looked out across the people whose lives had been touched by projects he helped create. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. Cities do not become stronger because of one person. They become stronger because ordinary people choose to help one another. His gaze moved through the crowd before finding me. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change more lives than anyone realizes. Emotion tightened my throat. I knew exactly what he meant. The crowd applauded again, louder this time. Not because of power. Not because of influence. Because they understood. Later that evening, after the event ended, Adrian and I walked along the river beneath strings of golden lights. The city reflected across the water like a field of stars. Neither of us hurried to speak. We never needed to. Finally, he stopped near the railing and looked toward the skyline. "Do you remember the first night we met?" he asked. I laughed softly. I do not think I could forget. A rare smile appeared. Neither could I. For a moment, the sounds of the city faded into the background. The river moved quietly below us. Summer air drifted through the lights above. Adrian reached into his pocket and handed me a small framed photograph. It was the old picture from the bus station. The moment that connected everything. The moment neither of us fully understood at the time. "Keep it," he said. "Why?" His expression softened. "Because every good thing that happened after that started there." I looked down at the photograph and smiled. Then I looked back at the man standing beside me. The man whose order had once terrified an entire room. The man who chose gratitude when others expected anger. The man who never forgot a kindness. And standing there beneath the lights with the city glowing around us, I realized the story had never been about power at all. It was about what happens when kindness is remembered. And sometimes, remembered kindness becomes the beginning of a beautiful life.